You're listening to the After Five podcast. So listen up, bitch.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the After Five podcast. Your boy Josue. As always, I'm joined by my hetero life partner, Lewis, my boy Mike. And today we have a special guest. Mike, introduce our special guest, man. We've been able to talk to him off air. Cool as shit guy.
Yeah, definitely. This is my friend Robert. Robert is he lives actually in Fort Lauderdale. We went to middle school together in Hialeah, Palm Springs North, represent, and actually met later on at a birthday dinner in Washington, D.C. So we've been catching up during these COVID times, and figured he would be a great contributor to the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Robert.
Thank you, guys. I feel very grateful to be here.
When have two guys from Hialeah ever said that they met in Washington?
It was at a bar called La Society. La Society in the middle of DC. An apt name for a place in the middle of DC. And both of us, me and Mike, the bar was empty. We showed up early. And me and Mike, we started talking, and we started talking about pickup. And game and stuff like that. And we were there alone. We were dressed well. We were young guys. We were in our 20s at the time.
Yeah.
Now we're old and we're starting to get, and anyways, and we were just talking, and it's something about our energy that I think one girl came up to me and another one came up to him, which never happens, as you guys know. And after that, I was like, this guy's got to be my friend. And I found out that he was from Florida and everything. And that's how, and ever since then, we've been good friends,
Nice. Anytime you get a Cuban and a Colombian in the same place, there is some charisma is going to come out. Like it's going to happen. Either that or blow.
That was a good night. That was a good night.
Was.
Yeah.
It was. So, and it's kind of funny because we became friends arguably through pickup. We were sort of kind of there. We were going out, and that's what we were talking about. That's at least what I was talking about. And since then, I know that me and Mike have had this very incredible journey where we have. I wouldn't say that we've left that behind. Certainly you learn a lot of lessons from that, but we have sort of, how would you say that, Mike? I feel like we have sort of like left it behind, but not complete. We've evolved.
Yeah.
We've evolved.
For sure.
And certainly a part of me thinks about whether or not, and I talked to, I was sort of evangelizing that at one point, and I wonder how much harm I did with that. Do you ever think about that?
Well, if you think about the general approach, no pun intended, the general approach of the pickup artist community, they tend to objectify women in order to, talk to girls and sleep with them. And because but they do it in such a way, they bring in sales tactics, all the things that if you were to ever go to sales training, they would teach you how to close a sale, and they use the same or very similar methods, and they just change the verbiage.
How to close the ass.
Exactly, but it's essentially how do you go up to and speak with one chick who's at the bar, or versus how do you go to a group of women who are at a bar? How do you go up to and talk to a woman who's talking to another dude, but you find her cute? You have no way of knowing whether that's her husband, boyfriend, or her gay friend. You have no way of knowing that until you go up and open, as they would say, and speak to them. And, little by little through I would say one of the best frames that I still kind of think is fun to use when you're generally flirting with people is cocky comedy, where you have to be a little bit funny. So you have to observe what's going on around you that other people would also notice and find funny. But then you also have to imbue into that your own, overconfidence-ness. Because if you don't do that, if you don't make yourself look like a fool a little bit, or if you don't expose yourself a little bit, then, you're going to be reserved. You're just going to go up and like, oh, hey, how are you doing? What is your favorite drink? Like, you can't, that stuff doesn't work.
I think you kind of hit the head on the head there.
Anything but the truth after that.
Listen, comedy is the way. I think if you ask most women, if you can make them laugh, you are halfway there. Obviously, you can't be some ugly fucking shud and make them laugh. They're just gonna think you're the funny fat guy. But if you could make them laugh, and then you have some of the other intangibles, absolutely. Making them laugh, that's the way you open the door. That's how you step in, literally and figuratively. But I had to laugh when you compared it to sales tactics, because I mean, I've done sales in the past, and you read books on marketing and sales and all that bullshit, and they all have one thing in common, where they say you have to ask for the business. Ask for the business. So at this point, Mike's telling me this, and I'm like, you're just gonna bluntly ask for the pussy. You're gonna be like, so I just want to know right off the bat, what are you willing to give me?
It's got like you have to have some finesse in it. Although, hey, I want to say something about laughter. It's laughter is subversive, because if you could get someone to laugh, it's like getting them to laughter is connected to truth. And you probably know about this, because if you get somebody to laugh about something, they're laughing about something because it's kind of like truth. They're like, ha ha ha.
They're relating
man,
to
this guy, he's got a point. This guy's got a point. So the laughter is very subversive, which is why you see people, the first people that get sent to the firing squad is the comedian. So you be the first one that they send. They're like, hey, this guy is making too many people laugh. Let's quiet him down.
And like like they all say about comedians, you have to know what it feels like to bomb, because they all bomb.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you're hitting on a girl, you're gonna 8 out of 10 times you're gonna bomb. It's those 2 times.
Yep.
And when you're trying to land a good joke, what you're actually doing is you're aiming at something. You're actually aiming at the edge of what other people perceive to be the limit of conversation in that environment. So you can aim past it and bomb, or you can aim way short of it and bomb. But if you get right there at the edge where things that people are thinking that are sort of sinister or sort of, taboo, but you could still spin it and deliver it in a way that can be culturally acceptable for the times, you can make a lot of people laugh.
Well, I think you're also gauging their personality. Yep. Like certain things that you're saying, right? You kind of know how far you can push it. If they laugh at one thing, and then you can't kind of keep going, and then you'll know how far you can go, and you could kind of understand or have a feel for what kind of person you're talking to.
Yeah, if you go up to a girl,
a certain level of tension, you got to put the tension there, take it to the right spot, and then
right. Because if somebody's like, oh, you can't laugh at that, you're like, oh, this, she's a little bit authoritarian. She's the one that's going to be telling me, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm like, I don't want to marry this chick, So it's interesting how it brings out, I like that point that you made. It kind of brings that out. It's a way of testing people. It's kind of like with a group of guys, like, you guys are like playing football outside, and you start, the first thing we start doing is we start insulting each other. And we're like, oh, you're a little pussy, you're this and that. And the guy who doesn't take it well, like, you don't want to hang out with that guy. He can't, he doesn't have a thick skin. So I guess the same thing applies to pickup, dating, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although, it's a careful balance, because your jokes can also be a bit out of taste,
you have to and just start dropping some fucking bombs right off the bat.
Because then it's not funny. Then it's not funny.
And you know what? And it's everybody knows that guy who then takes it. I feel like my mic's too loud. Is it too loud, guys?
No, it's perfect for me, at least.
Everybody knows that guy, or has had that friend when you're out with a group of girls who just everything's going fine, and then he just drops that bad joke, or he takes it a little bit too far and starts talking about a 3-way with a nun or some shit like that. That just
it's out of taste, poor taste. And the other thing is you actually have to be funny, because you have to know the balance between being funny and being cocky. Because if you're just only funny, in other words, if you just go in making self-deprecating jokes after self-deprecating jokes, then you're just going to be a clown. You're not going to spark any attraction in that person. And a lot of this may even apply not just to women, but like if you're in a new place and you're trying to make friends, like you said, like if you go onto a sports team for the first time and you can't take a joke or make a joke back when somebody gives you a funny name, then you might not be considered part of the in group.
That's usually the guy you don't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody who can't take a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. We know a few.
And
of
the guy who in battle or can betray you.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who will betray you. So, and because sports is a simulacrum of warfare. So this guy who's not playing with the team, who can't take a joke, he's going to be the guy who's going to betray you. So at least that's what I believe.
That's usually the lone wolf, though.
Lone wolf, because there are good lone wolves. There are good lone wolves, guys who are like, he's off on his own, but he's a cool guy. And then there's the lone wolf who just doesn't fit anywhere.
We call those people sociopaths.
Yeah.
The self-centered guy. It's about him.
Oh yeah, well.
When they make it too much about him, it's like forget it.
Listen, when I remember when I got divorced, I doing self-reflection or whatever. So I actually started going to a therapist to kind of just go over things. And to me, therapy is awesome. Anyway, I think everyone should have some level of fucking therapy. And I remember just kind of talking to her, about just life and people's characteristics and shit like that, and like things that I was battling with other people, and just other people who were annoying me. At least when you get divorced, there's one specific person that's annoying you at that point in time. And this lady was like pretty brilliant. She stopped taking health insurance. So that's why I stopped going to her. That shit went from like $50 a session to like 190. So I was like, well, thank you for your help so far. But she broke down the characteristics of like certain people, not, or whomever I was talking about, but just certain people in general. And she told me something that was really funny, because usually therapists aren't judgmental, but she said, you always need to be aware of a grown adult who doesn't have at least one childhood friend, because that is someone who can't, unless they were, she prefaced it by saying, unless their parents were in the military or they just got here from another country and don't have anyone but any grown adult or someone who's already of college age around there that doesn't have at least one childhood friend, there's a lack of I forgot the word she used, but basically these are people who don't value friendship, don't value relationships, and can't relate to other human beings. So that is the type of person who's going to betray you, or the type of person that's usually is very self-absorbed, very eye-centered, and doesn't really give a shit about making friends with those who are. So anytime you guys meet someone, or you're gonna meet a girl or whoever who doesn't have girlfriends or friends from high school or middle school or elementary school, run the other fucking way.
I'm gonna bring something up about the importance of social interaction. And I feel like Mike is like, Rob, I've heard this like 50 times already. We talk about this damn guy all the damn time. I guess I'll say his name, Jordan Peterson. I love
Jordan Peterson.
The guy is a I don't know what to say. I don't know if you can describe him. He's a sage. He's like a prophet. Who knows? I don't want to. A brilliant guy. He's like the voice of a lot of people, or like the father we've never had. And he goes off in his new book, Beyond Order. There's a point at which he starts going into this. He says that because he's a clinical psychologist, so he also has his own clinical patients that he sees and come into his practice, and he says that he begins an assessment of their situation, so to speak, because they're showing up with problems and everything. He begins any analysis with a series of questions. He says, has this person been educated to his utmost, to his intellectual ability? Does he have a rewarding social life? Does he have a job that provides him with stability? Does he have a rewarding relationship with a girlfriend? He goes through a bunch of questions, and he says, if the answer to any three of these is no, then I usually conclude that the person is not enmeshed enough or intertwined with the interpersonal world. And what does that mean? He's basically saying that if the answer to any of those questions is no, this person is not having enough interaction with people. It's crucial for people to bounce their ideas off of their friends, to talk to other people, because that's when when you talk to somebody, you're like, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this. That's when somebody's like, dude, you're crazy. What are you thinking? It's important to talk with people, and people who don't talk to others and who isolate themselves, their mind goes off into somewhere that's usually not good.
Into the
It's
forest,
not a good place.
like a
They
Unabomber.
don't have
forest.
sounding boards. You need a sounding board, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need people to check in on you, or you need to at least checking in on other people where you could be their sounding board, one or the other. But usually people that makes a lot of sense. People who are like that are like almost have like a level of social anxiety or social just like that, where
It's a loop.
Yeah, and when they are put in that situation, they're completely either detached or inappropriate in the manner in which they communicate. And at least that's what I know a few people, unfortunately, in my life, or that I've known, that are like that, where they literally have no one. You start wondering, all right, who's their friend? Like everybody, like I could tell you who Lewis has as a friend other than me. The few, and he has cousins that he talks to. Mike, I know Mike has several friends, and Rob, you at the very least have Mike, and I'm sure you have 1,000 other friends.
And my clients.
And there you go. So you're their therapist there. But it's so crucial for people to be able to have another person to have a relationship with. I fuck around and I call Lewis my hetero life partner, because I've literally known the guy since we were 8 years old. So there's very few things about him that I don't know. Shit, I'm the one that suggested he shave his head. Look how great he looks.
Does he agree with you?
Oh.
I'll never forget the day that I was walking by that window and I saw him behind the glass, and I was like, I gotta take him.
Luis, I've recently started cutting my hair really short, and I love it, man. And
I just did it about a year ago, and it's great.
I mean, I had the facial hair for the contrast, but it looks great, man. I really like the look. And anybody who's like losing hair or even if it's starting to thin and stuff, I think it's a great choice.
Totally.
Guys, I wanted to see what you guys thought about this. So we're talking about the fact that people are becoming, anxiety is like on the rise. I'm sure that you guys know this, and I think it's because people are becoming atomized. And by atomized, I mean people are losing connection to larger institutions. We're not belonging to churches. We're not belonging to groups. We're not spending time with other people anymore. And we were just talking earlier that a report just came out. I don't know if it was a report, maybe one of you guys can look it up, or it was like a poll or something and it's a poll that's been going on for like 80 years. And it found that for the first time ever that this poll has been going on, it found that for the first time ever, less than 50% of Americans belong to church. First time ever. Up until as recently as the year 2000, like around 71% of Americans belong to some sort of church. And the number now today is 47%. And I just feel like all of these institutions are falling little by little around us. They're just collapsing.
So that falls blame that on the internet, dude. That's like a lot of chat rooms, a lot of social clubs that people join and they form, and the followers and that type of shit. I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean,
I think it's more than that. What do you?
I actually pulled up the article. You might have read it on Forbes. It was a Gallup poll, and I'm going to read you. It says American church membership drops below 50% for the first time. This just came out in March. U.S. church membership has fallen below 50% for the first time, according to a Gallup poll published Monday, continuing a decades-long decline in membership driven by growing numbers of Americans who express no religious affiliation.
And I believe, you can look at the report yourselves. The largest drops were, and they separated geographically by political affiliation. They separated by sex, and the largest drops were in the eastern United States. The largest drops among Democrats, and and I think and young women, the largest drops. And I think in denominational terms, the Catholic Church lost a lot of people. And I know this is sort of like one of the third rails. Nobody wants to talk about these topics, religion, politics, and all this. But I think this is important for our society. The fact that we don't have any bonds that really tie us together, and what else ties us together here in this country where we have no identity. And there's no national identity. I mean, and even the things like such as going to church, and those things are kind of like falling by the wayside. And then we wonder why people are anxious, why people have anxiety, why people have mental health issues, because we don't talk to other people. We don't spend time around others.
Well, it's the media, bro. Too much media attention.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think that people will never stop being religious. It's just, what are they worshiping and what are they considering as idols? Because if you look at, for example, what do people, let's just say millennials, right? On average, if you have a general picture of millennials, I consider myself part of the millennial generation. We spend an increasing portion of our time looking down at our phones or on Netflix, or just consuming pop culture. None of those things have a rich history or rich tradition. So meaning that these things that we focus our attention on are a lot more malleable, flexible, and shallow. They change with the times very quickly. Some producer wants to make some movie and turn this story and make it all about wokeism. And now people are saying, they're getting sort of incepted with these ideas that have there's no roots in them. Like, meaning your tradition, which your parents made, for example, the three of you are Cuban, my parents are Colombian. If, our parents believed certain things and they were probably a lot closer together in their beliefs. And maybe if you go farther back into their parents or our grandparents probably had a lot more similar beliefs about things in life than our current generations do. So, I think the problem is that people are still going to want to focus their attention and energy on something. It's just, what are those things? And are those things worthy of our attention to that extent?
It's funny because there's three different things that Rob mentioned in that report, or that in that article, that kind of struck a chord with me, where the decline might keep happening. And it starts off with decline in young women, for example. So, and again, this might be stereotypical, but if you go into any young household, husband and wife that were just married, they're young, they have a baby. Usually the mom is the one that's the catalyst of, when it comes to, all right, you got church on Sunday, get the kids dressed, maybe it's just The Simpsons, but it seemed like Marge was always fucking forcing Homer and the kids to go to church. In my house, it was always my mom that, was the one that's like, all right, the next we have church. And when you have young women, pretty much not going to church, then you start wondering, okay, young women, all right, so that sucks, because they usually, it starts there. Everybody has a basis when they're young, whether it's a man or a woman. If your family goes to church, then most likely you're going to go to church. So I was surprised by seeing a decline in young women. And then also, the divorce rate is through the roof. The divorce rate right now in this country is higher than ever. I would say that affects the situation as well, where usually it's families that go to church, and sometimes people who are divorced aren't really believers. Right now, they're not in a place to believe in anything other than working and taking care of their kids. There's certain things like that. So it's is there a father in the home? Like, all that shit is higher than ever, and that probably, to me, honestly, I would say that affects our sense of community, and that's the scariest part about it, because that's what church. Sure, there's the religious component, but fucking sense of community. That's it. Like, that, for the most part, when you think church, it's a lot of people gathering, eating after the misa or whatever, and getting to know each other, and what's it called? Fellowship, stuff like that. And all of a sudden now it's declining. And Lewis might have kind of struck a chord there too, with the media and the internet. I watch a sermon on Facebook every Sunday, even if it's like this guy Steve Furyk, 5 or 10 minutes when I can. and that might, you know, play a part in
Yeah,
it.
we've been doing it online in the house also, and it's I mean, it's mostly consistent, and it's again, it gives you an hour just to like, you know, focus on something else but what's driven around you. It's like, you look, you gotta listen to this guy, you gotta agree with some things, you gotta
Yeah.
you make some hints, and it is. I mean, you definitely need that, whether you will not want to do it at the moment, or but you do need it though. I agree.
Yeah.
It's important to believe in something higher than oneself, whatever
Right.
it be, whether it's Jesus Christ, Allah, you know, whatever.
Or whatever it is. I mean, it gives you
The
a time,
Holy
it gives
Ghost
you a
of
time
Steve
to
Jobs
relax.
for Mike.
The Holy Ghost of Steve Jobs. When my video gets knocked down and you guys can't see me, I'll say that I'm the Holy Ghost. So.
But Mike, would you know? And it's funny because Lewis is telling the story, and then the freaking 12-year-old, and he has to laugh because he's like, "We do it online." And I wanted to
And-
interject with, is it like church or just it?
and
I mean,
Josue, you're a father. You know, you have 4 kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And Luis, do you have children?
yeah, I have a 14-year-old.
Just a 14-year-old.
Yeah, girl.
And you guys are married?
Yes.
Married
each other.
And- to
It's a
the
blended
local
family.
very good, very good. And do you guys what's it like raising children? And you guys are both in Miami right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
What's it like raising kids down there?
It's
I mean,
not the usual. I mean, it's not. I think my personal opinion is it's not. How do I put it? It's not. I don't know. I don't find it that normal here. I mean, you gotta do it because you're here. You're not gonna. I can't just get up tomorrow and you know. I don't. I'm not.
what
I don't
is
work.
what
I
is
don't work at the
normal?
hospital. I can go work anywhere else. I have to stick here because my job, you know, requires me to stay here. But it's not normal to raise a family here, and any of you guys can vouch for me on that. I think. I mean, it's just not. It's like living
Well-
here. Sometimes it's great. The weather's great. You know, there's nice people, and there's, you know, a lot of business going on and stuff. But it's just not.
What would it
I've
look
been-
like, Lewis? What, as a follow-up question, what would it look like to have a normal situation to raise kids in, and like what elements would be involved in that? Like, what are the important parts do you think that would help you successfully raise healthy children?
To me, it's routine. To me, it's a routine where it's, you know, try to get them up as early as possible. You know, have dinner as early as possible. Get them to bed as early as possible. And they might not like it because that's just a natural reaction. But as long as they know that that's what you and your husband and wife are pushing for, they kind of respect it. Will they try to go around it like we all tried? Like I tried to when I was a kid, of course. But I still knew that there was, you know, a union above me that was what you had to do. And it's like now a lot of parents are like, let the kids do whatever they want. And once that level gets crossed where it's like you can do whatever you want and my mom doesn't care, that wears off really fast, dude, really fast. And they start, I mean, it's nothing that I would know because I wasn't raised like that. Like every time I tried to do something and try to get away with it, I always got, you know, I would always either get
There's always
punished
eyes on you.
Huh?
There was always eyes on you.
eyes on me, and they would tell me they were every day ponte a trabajar and get to work and don't think that this shit's easy, and that's I would get that all day long. So I think kids need that, and a lot of kids nowadays don't have that. I think, you know, it's mostly because our generation and the millennial generation has changed, and you know they had it better than or different than, you know, our parents had. They probably didn't have to struggle as much, but which that probably played a factor. But I think you get better results that way, in my opinion.
You know, I think that children need some sort of structure in their life, you know, and family provides that. If on top of family, you also have, you know, kind of just going back to the idea of like the church and stuff like that. Even if it's not a church, some sort of organization around that is organized around a set of values.
Sure.
Because, and you know, you brought something up, Luis, you know, somebody who you can look up to, And okay, yeah, the kids look up to you as a parent. Who do you look up to? Who do you look up to? And increasingly it's just, the answer is like, I just look up to myself, and
LeBron
who are,
James.
Kim
yeah,
K.
LeBron James. I've seen
Well,
so
I
many
mean,
funny memes now
I think the
about
most
LeBron.
important thing, sorry to cut you off. The most important thing is
No,
to
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure that the most important thing is to make sure that both parents are on the same page. Because if one parent is telling them, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that, mostly the right way, which is mostly go to sleep on time, eat,
Right.
make sure you get good, just the basic stuff. And if one parent's not on it, then you totally lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know plenty of
Wait.
people on that boat, because if you stand up and you're like, do this, do this, do that, and all of a sudden, like, hey, you know what? Maybe she doesn't have to do that. Maybe
Yeah.
she can, like, finding routes for her to, then it doesn't work that way. It's and
Yeah.
that's immediate attention that they get right on the spot. So that's like, they look at you kind of like every time you do something, or that other person, one guy's a bad guy, good cop, bad cop, and that, to me, that doesn't work, and you get bad results like that, I think.
And yeah, that's the basic fundamental in raising kids. Even if you're not on the same page, pretend you are.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
going back to what
and
you
you better
Mike
be
were-
good. You better be good at pretending, because kids
Yeah.
are smart and they can tell when you're faking.
they'll
it.
pick it up quick as shit. Like my kids know if me and my wife have even the slightest amount, as the youth would say, beef, that they'll catch on to it quick. But
They catch that crack in the wall and just
they'll catch it quick. But going back to what you and what Rob and Mike were talking about, and kind of piggybacking on what Lewis was saying about it not being normal. I think one of the biggest challenges that you face as a parent, whether you have 4 kids like me or one like Lewis, is that you find yourself parenting against other parents, in the sense where there's a good chance sometimes another household doesn't have the same values that you have in your house. And no better, no worse, but sometimes those kids aren't being watched. Sometimes those kids aren't being monitored, what they're watching on YouTube, what they're, TikTok, what they're listening to. And then they're bringing that to your kids. And not to say that,
Exactly.
that, we're Bible thumpers or anything of that nature, or that we're that strict with our kids, but we definitely have a certain standard that we hold our children to and accountable for. And other parents don't do that. So you try to kind of surround yourself with like mind.
And right. And a lot of
parents
that stuff, and a
that
lot
you
of that
have-
stuff I think it's toxic, is that so easy to have access to it. It's not like the kids have to, like, TikTok is not, it's not like you open it and you have to read. You don't have to read TikTok. You
Yeah.
say, oh, here's chapter 1. And then you would get whatever you get from there. You could go ahead and it doesn't work like that. It's just simple as, a 10-second, 20-second video.
TikTok is a
Exactly.
drug. TikTok is a virtually administered hit of dopamine, because of every single time you have a 10 to 30 second piece of content that's brand new, it's got music to go with it, and all your friends are watching it, so you have to watch it, otherwise you're lost. And what kind of value does it provide to help that kid grow? Beside being oriented alongside their peers, and oh yeah, we know this meme and that meme, and it's kind of fun. Other than that, how productive is it to be on TikTok more than like 30 minutes a day? And kids are on there for hours and hours and hours.
And it cooks their brain too. It really cooks their brain, because all this anxiety that they're having is connected to the fact that and you guys are adults. We're all adults here, but I'm sure that, when's the first time you guys got your phone? I got my first phone when I was like 15, 16 in high school. These kids have them. It's like another appendage. They're like 4 or 5 years old and they already got the freaking like iPhone 17 or whatever. This is like part of them now, and it's no wonder that their thinking is so warped. And they have all these anxiety issues and identity crises. It's tough. It's tough.
I think it's a Trojan horse. I think, TikTok is a really big example of it, but many of the social media platforms appear to be a Trojan horse, meaning it seems innocent. It seems like a gift. Something's like, oh, okay, you welcome it into your life, into your home. And before you know it, you're spending increasingly more and more time on it. And the people behind the engineers behind Facebook have come out and admitted, some of them in protest after the fact, have admitted that Facebook, for example, hires psychologists, not just any psychologists. They hire the same psychologists that Vegas casinos hire to make their casino games more addictive, the slot machine style of just hooking your brain, stimulus reward, stimulus reward. And they do that and they apply it to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be.
The best of the best.
Yeah. I think Rob dropped off there. His phone might have died, and that's probably what happened, but I'm sure he'll be back as soon as he gets a charger.
All right, let's trash him.
Oh, there he is.
There he
he
goes.
is.
I'm back.
It's funny you say that, Mike, because I mean it started way back with MySpace and then YouTube. I think to me YouTube's the biggest Trojan horse. I mean, fuck TikTok. You get on YouTube and then there's just one video, that algorithm that's just, it's in your brain. All of us, and verbally you might say something, and then next thing you know, you log on to YouTube and you were talking about fucking fixing your lawnmower, and then you log on to YouTube and all of a sudden it's like quick fix lawnmower repairs, all sorts of shit popping up on your YouTube feed. And it's 100% a Trojan horse. And you could sit, how long hasn't everybody here, I could bet my next freaking car payment that everyone here has gone down the YouTube rabbit hole and just gone from the next video to, at one point in their lives, to the next.
I think we all have, although I would say that I do believe that sort of like Instagram, anything that has like a like button on it, that is the worst, because what are people addicted to? People are addicted to attention. So I mean, good point. I guess YouTube, has a like feature. They have a like, but you got to produce something for YouTube. You actually have to produce a video.
That's harder.
You have to produce content. On Instagram, you post a picture of your ass, and you got 54 likes in a minute. If you're like a young girl.
Guilty.
But if you're, and it's like why are the young girls not going to church anymore? Because they're looking at me in the palace of me, Instagram, me in the palace of me. That's where they're worshiping, and I won't get into that, but that's where people have their attention and their mind. They don't have their mind on greater things. And it's unfortunate that our society is kind of like moving in this direction of this, this superficiality, because, a lot of these young girls, they get to age 30 and they're like, I don't have a husband, I don't have kids. And I hate to break it to you, but when you're 30, 32, 33, 34, 35, at some point, you realize those things lose their luster. Those things that, you had fun with in your 20s, they lose their luster. And somebody needs to be telling, whether it's their father or the mother, needs to be telling them, hey, don't be wasting your time on these things. You have to pursue something that's meaningful. And I don't know about you guys in Miami, but I feel like Miami is full of like all the worst temptations, just club after club after club, Miami Beach, like the worst things. And none of these things are going to build anyone. These things aren't going to edify anyone. I go to other cities in the United States and they're not built around this. They're not built around this, like, this whole party scene. And I heard the news the other day that Amazon and Microsoft and all these big Silicon Tech Valley, companies wanted to relocate here to Miami. And I was like, I hope they don't. Actually, because if all that money flows into South Florida, good luck with your rent, good luck with your traffic, good luck with all these things that are really going to make people, if you want a bastion, of family living and stuff, you're not going to go to San Francisco. San Francisco has people like defecating on the street.
Well, they actually have a poop department. The only city in the entire United States that has on top of their waste management facility, which every city has, they have one department that's specifically the human feces pickup department. And they go around and they have their own logos and their own trucks and their job is to clean up the poop off the streets, because unfortunately they have a massive homelessness problem, and it's become an even bigger problem by the permissiveness disguised as a benevolent empathy for the homeless and indigenous populations. But it's
Mike
not a
loves
real
that
solution.
fact.
Yeah.
He's
It's
told me
a-
that fact a few times already.
Huh?
It's like a
App, there's a
tolerant.
poop app and everything.
No,
then
there is
you
a
know-
poop. There's a poop app, and you can, just like when you go, for example, on the Uber app, you open up the app,
the poober app.
and there's a map of where all the Uber cars are. Well, this poop app for the poop pickup people, there's a triple P's right there. It has a specific little shit icon for wherever there's somebody reported a poop on the sidewalk.
There's poop
So
XL.
and the whole map is
God.
just littered with like poop emojis,
There's
or whatever
shit
it is.
everywhere.
It's just
Well,
everywhere.
and I don't know if you guys heard, and I'm very afraid that this is going to start happening in South Florida. As you know, as it becomes increasingly urbanized, we start having the same problems that other cities have. So their solution, the solution in I hate to trash San Francisco, but I'm going to trash San Francisco. Their solution to trash on the street was to ban garbage cans. I'm like, how does that make sense? It's like, we have a public defecation problem, so ban all the toilets.
Yeah, they close all the bathrooms. No public bathrooms.
we have an unintended pregnancy problem, so we're gonna ban the use of condoms and other measures.
Well, I mean, I remember when Mike told me about this, and I think I had heard it on Joe Rogan. One of the biggest issues and why that's happening is because a lot of local businesses aren't letting the homeless people at gas stations, grocery stores, aren't letting homeless people go in there to use the restrooms. So the homeless people are like, all right, well, I'm just gonna shit right here on the sidewalk of your business. Let's see how that works out for you. But it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it about that's, it's like everyone that goes there talks about that problem.
They never got out of the 60s in that sense. Like the majority of the homeless people, and I remember reading an article about this. This was about 10 years ago. And I was just fascinated by it, that I still remembered this article. There are still active hippies that live in San Francisco. And we're talking about like not people that were born in the fucking 70s and loved it and read about it. Motherfuckers that were on acid back then. And you're talking about still a few thousand hippies that no one told them that the 60s fucking are long. They're
still there.
Dude, they're still there. They're just old, but they're still there on the streets, man. Homeless as shit.
Still actively tripping.
And they're still actively tripping and on drugs and all that shit.
Allegedly.
So San Francisco just never recovered from,
And it's such a rich city. Such a rich city.
Yeah.
Rich city.
A lot of history.
Yeah.
Well, all the big Silicon Valley tech companies are there because you have San Jose just a few minutes south of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Just the rent and the mortgage is fucking ridiculous. Property value in San Francisco is just absurd. Sorry, Louis. I mean, we're talking about your field here. We're talking about property values and loans and money. Would like to chime in?
No, I've heard, dude. I watch it, and I mean, it's mostly that. It's Oregon. It's those mostly Democratic run states that are like that. But it's true.
Why does that happen? Does anyone even have a clue as to why the Democrat-run cities tend to be the most poorly managed cities?
Why?
Well,
yeah, like if you go through New York City right now, Washington D.C., if you go through Portland, if you go through San Francisco, all mostly Democrat-run cities. Why do those seem to have these glaring problems that can't be dealt with when they have the relatively higher tax rate? So you would think that they were funded enough to be able to address some of these issues.
And keep in mind that Miami-Dade County just elected a Democrat, for the countywide mayoral office.
Start shit in the streets.
It really is a chicken and the egg problem. You don't know if people are electing Democrats who are then causing these problems, or these problems are just a result of increased urbanization. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember how long you guys been in Miami. Do you guys remember when there were like only like a few skyscrapers in Miami? Now it looks like a mini Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, that brings all its own challenges over there with traffic, people being homeless. I mean, what are the problems of a major city? Is that a problem that, even a Republican, or regardless of your party affiliation, what are the challenges of running a big city? High crime, trash on the streets. What are the things people care about? You don't want to see people defecating on the street. So what do you do about it? I think the problem with a lot of, and I would say specifically progressive politicians, and the funny thing is that I hate to pigeonhole myself and say I'm this, I'm that. I just like things that work. Everybody wants to live in a clean city. Nobody wants to live in a city where there's crime, where you go outside and you're worried about if your wife is going to get robbed, if your kids are going to get robbed or shot. I don't know if you guys hear the reports, but like every weekend there's like 24 people who get shot in Chicago. And I think it's, or maybe you go to Portland and it's like there's like a new riot in front of the federal courthouse every other day. And there's this general sense of this like permissiveness, from these, I hate to say, the progressive like politicians, they just permit everything. And sometimes people get a little bit like, when's it going to stop? Why?
Oh, looks like he fell off.
It
looks like there's some censorship going on. Zoom censorship.
Zoom is like, Rob, and what people want, and I don't know if you guys have seen the videos in San Francisco. Some people who live in the city, they have these nice apartments, but they got to walk through this whole city, this tent city of homeless people outside. And you're just like, it's like, if you break one county regulation on like this, on owning, if you don't own 3 licenses for your business, you get thrown out. You're out. The county is in your business. But this guy who's like crapping on the street, there's no enforcement. So it's almost like this reverse. It always seems, and as if though, and I'm sure Josue, you can write all sorts of funny stand-up about this, because there's some truth to be said about this. It's almost hilarious. You're like, it seems like the moral order has been inverted. And they make you're the crazy guy. You're crazy. Not you. No, you're crazy. And
well,
it's insane.
There's a famous saying that says it is more difficult for you to run your own household than to run an entire city. And I think that there are different levels at which we can look at a problem. The most basic levels of organization, they start with obviously yourself as an atom, then it's your nuclear family in your household, then it's your community, your family, your friends, your sports teams, your kickball tournament teams, then it's your local government, then your state government, then your federal government, and then whatever, the New World Order, and obviously religious types have God on top of that. And I think that when you have people who haven't, it's almost like in order to be granted the permission or the privilege to run your local government, you should have demonstrated that you can properly run your own household and that you've contributed to your community successfully. Because if someone can just be elected out of a popularity contest without first having some sort of level of competence at just running their own household, raising good kids, whatever that may be, but some marker of success in running something important, how can they be trusted to run an entire state or a nation?
It's funny. I heard it on a podcast, and I hate throwing misinformation out there, but it's either Sacramento or it's a relatively big city in California, where the mayor didn't even have good credit. And so he was
Oh,
running
good.
again for like re-election, and they were like, "You don't even have good fucking credit. Like, how are you gonna fix our, our financial woes here as a city if you don't even have fucking good credit?" And the guy was like, I
Yeah,
had
they
a floundering
they totally
business because
hired
of
the wrong
COVID.
people.
Huh?
Totally.
No, and the saying, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." But there's a reason. There's a reason why. I don't know if you guys know Aristotle. I feel like they don't assign this stuff in school anymore. But Aristotle wrote this work called The Politics. He wrote this long treatise on politics, on all the different sorts of governments, how they break down, blah blah blah. But he begins his discussion on politics with the family. Actually, he says that the smallest political unit is actually the family, and government begins in the family. So, if you
Makes
don't
sense.
clean your room, if you don't have your house in order, how can you pretend to be out on the street crying for like revolution? It's like, my man, your tires aren't even inflated.
You
You
need to
don't
set
even
your
have a
revolution in the
car.
kitchen.
No,
Yeah, like
it's have
you
your
need
house in order first. There's an old that's
yeah.
you have to have your house in order.
It's
Yeah.
like revolution. There's a revolution going on in your sink with your dishes, my man.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
what do you?
to play devil's advocate, there was someone who said that, young people are growing up, they get to college and they start finding out about all these massive problems that we have in the world. Like, for example, climate change.
From the professors also.
Right.
But yeah.
And so how are kids, because when you're 18, you're basically still a kid. How are kids supposed to, learn about these massive problems, and they're expected to make some sort of contribution at a very small level before they're even allowed to speak up about these larger issues? But who knows, right? I think that inevitably what's going to have to happen is we're just going to have to become a culture that values solutions rather than complaints. Because complaints are one thing, right? It's a signal. It's like, hey, something's broken. Okay, that doesn't change anything, but it might lead to change. Eventually, what we need are solutions that work, sustainable solutions. And a lot of the times, the best solutions have come from engineers, scientists, innovators. Not politicians. Politicians rarely, if ever, make things better. They usually make things worse. Through corruption, through helping out their crony, corporate friends, or whatever the case may be. So, anyways,
That's grit, my man. That coming up with solutions. That's to me, grit is one of the most important factors in being successful or raising successful children. Is how much grit do your children show? How much do you instill in them? What values do you put in front of them? What values do they see in front of you?
right.
Because I mean, that was one of the first factors I had to, one of the first truths I had to face, if you will, when my son was born. I was 21, 22 years old with fucking nothing in my pocket. I was still in college. I was trying to finish college, and it's how am I going to raise him to be the man that I'm not?
Yep.
That's when you have to look in the mirror and you have to start making changes.
Do as I say, not as I do. As I did.
Exactly. That shit never works. Like your kid's gonna see you.
There's an interesting discussion there, Josue. There's something to be said there about responsibility, and I hate to go back again to the gospel of Jordan Peterson, but you were a father. You had responsibility. And when you had responsibility, you had to get your life in order.
Absolutely.
You didn't have time for a revolution and out on the street and climate change and what the climate emissions in India were. You just got to worry about providing for your family. And when you provide for I think that the real problem is that we are not teaching our children because we don't know it ourselves. We don't know it ourselves because our parents also didn't know it. And because their parents didn't know, this is like a long line of, this is a long vicious cycle we all have to break. And some societies are more well put together than others. But the ones that are less well put together are the ones where we don't stress practicality. We tell our kids, it's like, we send all our kids to these universities where they're like, they're always trying to get them on board with like the next cause, the next liberation movement, the next this, the next that. Meanwhile, they're racking up this like huge student loan debt. And it's like, hey guys, when you're done saving the world, by the way, you got to pay back your big student loan
You
debt.
better get a job.
And that's when it hits them.
Yeah.
And that's when they become bitter and they're like, oh, the system screwed me over. It's like, my man, you just weren't paying attention. You let you let yourself get caught up. And that's where we, as I'm not a father yet, I'd like to be someday, but that's where parents need to come in, and they need to come in confidently and say, guys, I understand, I understand that you're about to usher in the utopia, but did you, have you inflated your tires? Have you applied for a credit card? Do you have your resume in order? Have you cleaned your room? And there's like a big, which sort of explains Peterson's popularity. There's this big hunger and thirst for order and structure, not just among kids, but even among the adults, which again goes, we can tie it back in with the church, with the loss of some sort of ordering philosophy. It's really become a free-for-all. And there has to come a point at which we say, okay, guys, let's come back down to earth. We're talking about all of this upheaval, and meanwhile, you have your revolution. You're still fighting your revolution with your sink and your dishes.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. It's just to bring it back to Miami. That's that is the epitome of this city. People portraying to be something they're not. People preaching something that they don't really, they believe in, but at the same time, they haven't done the work to understand what it is they're even fighting about or fighting for. And it's like you said, they have their own dirty apartment, but yet they're worried about what your apartment looks like. They're worried about how you're acting and what it is you're doing. It's, and
Worried
not to
about
get
whether you're wearing a mask.
Exactly, shit like that, where it's when and not to get too political, but when people are walking up to people's houses and telling them that they don't deserve to live there, that they need to get out of that house, like they have, and again, it's
and then if they so much as brandish a weapon, now the state is going to come after them because, hey, you're not supposed to do that. I understand. You think that you have this Second Amendment to protect you, but actually,
I missed that part about people coming up to your house. What did that mean?
The what?
I didn't understand that part.
What was that? What was that incident where people were going up to people's houses?
What did you mean by that?
Come on, guys. No, that's oh boy. So when
haven't you heard?
Yeah. And again, not to get too political, because I respect everybody's cause and whatever it is you feel passionate about, fucking by all means. But there were a lot of clashes going on in Oregon, in Portland, even I think it was in Maryland as well, where there was protests going on, and the protesters were going into neighborhoods and like literally knocking on doors, telling people to get out of the house, that they don't deserve that house, that house used to be in a certain community. Like they literally went to the mayor's house in Portland and were screaming at him to get out of his house, not to beat him up, but that he doesn't deserve that house, that's not his house, that house doesn't belong to him.
Mayor Ted Wheeler.
Yeah. That's
Josue, and here's the thing. I see a lot of young kids in Miami, who they're like, oh, they think that they're, and Josue, you're Cuban, I'm Cuban, this happened in our country. Where they knock on the door and they say, oye, señor burgués, you Mr. Aristocrat, you member of the bourgeoisie. You know what? The people, the mob has decided that this house is ours now. And the rest is history.
Struggle sessions.
The struggle session where they bring you outside and you got to kneel. And after you've kneeled, you're lucky. You're lucky if we allow you to live under a bridge, you pathetic imperialist scum. You are lucky if we don't just kill you here in the spot, you worm. And I see these young kids in Miami, and they're like second generation, and they're like, these like right wing, parents of ours, they don't know, what are they talking about, and they have the luxury. They have the luxury of having grown up here in the United States. And certainly I did not experience that. I came here when I was 2 years old, but I certainly hear stories about my father and the sorts of persecution that existed back in Cuba. I remember, in the early 90s, the Venezuelans used to laugh at us. They're like, oh, these right wingers, what are you guys talking about? Chavez, he's not going to do anything. Oh, what are you guys talking about? And now they're in the same boat. And, I'll say this, if you believe that you are exempt from these things just by virtue of the fact that you live here in the United States, you're not. And yeah, I feel like I'm going off a little bit here.
So there's this other famous saying that I think is very relevant to this part of the discussion, and I'm sure you both have heard it come out of my mouth before. Strong men create peaceful times. Peaceful times create weak men. Weak men create difficult times. Difficult times create strong men, and it's this vicious cycle throughout history that we see. And I've been thinking about that a lot now, because I think we live in relatively peaceful times, at least here in the United States. We don't have foreign countries dropping bombs over on us. 9/11 was the closest thing we experienced to that. And, that was sheer terror for so many people. And yet there are other countries who live in the terror of a potential bombing near them any day, right? If you go over to Libya or Syria, some of these places. I think that the way you get around that is that once you have peaceful times, right, you educate yourself. Like that is an imperative thing that you do. You teach your kids to teach their kids to teach their kids that they should always be fully apprised of history and what has happened before, and convey the realness of that. And B, you during peaceful times train your mind, your body, your soul to as a strong person, as a warrior, spiritual warrior, emotionally intelligent, all these things, because you always have to be ready. There's that other saying that says, I would rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think that applies today. For example, I recently
There's a lot of fucking gardeners in a war right now.
Yeah, I recently started training Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Just as, for fun, and also because, hey, it could come in handy one day. And, it's funny because my close friends, they'll see it, they're into watching UFC, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's fun. But, some of the other people that I, just randomly talk to, maybe some coworkers or something, they're like, oh, why are you training jiu-jitsu? Why do you need to learn how to fight? And I'm like, well, why not? It's a good skill. Like, what, are you going to go fight somebody? I'm like, no, but you got to be ready. And they're like, what do you mean? Because in the relatively peaceful times that we live right now, there is no impetus to train for a potential fight. And I think that is the problem. The false sense of certainty that our relatively peaceful times will continue to be peaceful as long as we keep being good citizens, obeying the government, doing what our friends do, whatever it is, going with the flow, things will continue to be peaceful. That is probably the greatest weakness. It's probably the Achilles heel of our culture today.
It's what Venezuela thought. It's what Cuba thought. It's what a lot of countries thought, that can't happen here. Why do I need to own a gun? Why do I? And again, do I feel it would happen? It will happen in this country? No, God willing, it doesn't, because then that opens the door to a lot of shit and a lot of stuff Joe Rogan talks about. There's motherfuckers here and in this country that have seen real war, that are now acclimated to regular life, and you don't want to open that door, and you don't want these friggin' these monsters coming out and defending their rights that they think you're about to take, because then they might not know you who from who. At that point they're just defending themselves and their rights. And
so what happens though is that there's never, and this is what people, I remember we were the only ones. They're like, how did you guys let that happen? And then it happened in Venezuela as well. It doesn't just, the thing is that they don't just they don't just like call out all like the veterans and they're like, let's throw them all in jail. They come after one person at a time. And they knock on your door and they take your gun away. And then the media doesn't defend you. Your story never gets out. Everyone is atomized. Everyone is targeted individually and
methodically.
And methodically, yeah. People, they knock on your door and, your buddy's not there, Josue and Mike aren't here to, either you get your gun and go defend yourself right now, or you stay here, sir. You give it up. And that's how those things happen. They happen progressively. And, yeah, that's how it ends up happening. It's never a one-off event. It's a series of, once you have already knelt to the mob, they're going to ask you to do other things after that.
Absolutely.
And that's where it really begins. Although luckily I haven't seen that. I feel like I haven't seen that as much in South Florida. I don't think I've seen that much. Have you guys seen that?
I mean, here in South Florida, that's difficult to
I
occur,
think so.
Especially in the Miami, South Florida area, from even Broward County. I think they're, and again, what the fuck do I know? But at the same time, you won't see it as much here. Like,
well, it's a big melting pot in South Florida.
Yeah, way too many different cultures that don't give a fuck.
Right.
Well, and people who've had experience in this
more than anything. That.
Yeah.
But those people are getting old. Those people are dying.
Yeah, I think
the people that are coming behind them, third generation, don't feel the same way they do.
Yeah.
I think if you really wanted to divide and conquer South Florida, all you'd have to do, this is all you'd have to do, is create more traffic, because you will never see an angrier person angry at another human being for no reason other than you took his parking spot, or you're stuck in an hour and a half commute on the way home, and now you're getting road rage. So,
well, if you divide them by atomization, although I don't think that this is a planned process. This is just a process that happens as a result of greed. Developers, that's why all those buildings have gone up. That's why the traffic has exploded, because the local government can't resist the developers. And this is the part where I get canceled and my law firm gets targeted, by the way. Local developers have a lot of power here in Florida. They're the ones that make the decision to build the next high rise, even though the public infrastructure nearby can't really support it. Or even though they know that the rents are going to explode, even though they know it's going to attract all these clubs and all these things that are going to lead to a sort of, I mean, I hate to speak and talk about or express myself in these terms, but it kind of leads to like a moral degradation. They don't care about that. They care about the bigger buck, and they probably don't even have to live here. They can go their summer up to New England. They don't have to send their kids to the local high school. They don't have to deal with the traffic. No, they fly their helicopter out, and who are you electing to the county government, to your local government? Are they just kind of rubber stamping? That's why, I mean, I don't live in Miami. After I studied law in DC, I came back down. I was like, I don't want to live here anymore. And kind of goes to the conversation we were having before. I mean, I don't know how, a lot of young people are leaving Miami. Even people when they're getting older, they find that they can't afford it anymore. And the city is becoming dangerously close to becoming like another Los Angeles, like an overpriced, high traffic, extremely condensed place where life is difficult. Life is difficult. I don't know. You live down there, Josue.
Listen, there's a house 2 houses down from me that just sold for $589.
Wow.
$589.
Yeah.
Now, I don't live in Coral Gables. I don't live in Brickell. I live in between Westchester and Kendall. I live kind of by Tropical Park, so to speak, for anyone who's from Miami. Just to give you an example, the properties, the house, there's a house to my left, sold. It sold 2 years ago. The owners, they lived there for 30 years. They retired. They moved somewhere else. They sold it 2 years ago, I want to say they sold it for like 440, the house. Shit, 440, grade A, property values going up. This one just sold for 589, 2 years, maybe max 3 years later.
Wow.
That's almost $600,000.
Imagine, I mean,
worth it.
And what's the median family household income
Probably
down there?
like $70,000 a year.
Don't quote me on
income.
this. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that the average household income, I mean, don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere around the $50,000 range. If that sounds crazy to you, look it up.
I don't know how they would survive.
I don't know how they would survive either, but that's sort of what's going on down there. And people are getting squeezed out, and it's just like, I mean, is it going to become like Manhattan, where only the rich can live there?
Yeah. I mean, and it sucks because we don't have any other perks. I mean, at least not where I live. I mean, if you live closer to South Beach and downtown, I even understand that. But I mean, I was having a conversation with my son. I said an argument at first, but it wasn't really an argument. Just we have mind you, my son's turning 20 and he's going to be now a junior at the University of Florida. So he's entrenched. He's in there. He's in. Hey, we got Lewis back, and we're talking about $13 an hour minimum wage. And I'm trying to explain to him, or at least I started the conversation months ago, explaining to him that small businesses aren't gonna survive paying someone that washes dishes $13 an hour. Well, then he's telling me, but how's that dishwasher gonna survive? That's his rebuttal. How is that dishwasher going to survive?
Sure.
And it's a noble worry, but sure. My dad had to figure it out. My parents had to survive one way or the other. And, my argument to him is, well, then you're going to have to live a dishwasher's life.
Or how about this? How about you leave? How about you leave South Florida and you go somewhere else where your house isn't going to cost $600,000?
Yeah.
And increasingly that's the decision that a lot of people are making, because either, they bump up your minimum wage to $15. You're still going to be, I doubt that's going to help you get any closer to your dream house, that costs $500,000, and increasingly it's getting to the point where, unless you're a high flying professional making all this money, how are you really going to afford this without incurring all this debt? And hell, we haven't even thought about your car, which breaks down every few years. You got to get a new car, and that's another big debt. And it's like on top of it, you got to buy a house, and then you got to put up with the traffic. It's no wonder people are leaving down there. And
buy a house for $589. How much are you paying in taxes?
God,
almost
Jesus
10 G's.
Christ.
Almost 10 G's. So on top of your mortgage, you have another $1,000 basically to pay in fucking taxes. Sorry to cut you off, but you're talking about just the fucking cost between your car. The fucking taxes. How about that? On top of everything.
So my father was thinking about leaving. He's thinking about going up to like Bradenton, Tampa area, a little bit cheaper, a little bit more affordable, just because the taxes come in due at the end of the year.
Closer to the titty bars.
And there's more space.
Yeah.
There's more space out here. You can get more acreage, per dollar than you can down in some of the more congested areas.
Stop it, Mike. You just want people to move next to you.
I'm always
stop being alone. Just you and the titty bars.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'm gonna have to sign out right now. I have two hungry kids and a pissed off wife at this point, I think. But
hopefully
I'm gonna let Mike take over. I think she heard me say titty bars one too many times.
Like titty bars, what's going on in there? I don't want you hanging out with your friends anymore.
But hey Rob, it was a pleasure meeting you, brother. Anytime you want to come on the show, just let Mike know, man. We'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and
I should the most flattering view of you.
I should probably be bowing out myself. I have my own people calling me as well. So thank you guys for inviting me.
Yeah,
thank you guys for inviting me on the show and everything. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Thanks for coming on, Robert. Always appreciate talking to you, man. And Lewis, thanks for jumping back on for the end of the call to wrap it up.
That's commitment. What the fuck that is right there. Thank you, Lewis.
Yeah, no, I have to do. I'm actually 5 minutes late for my webcam, so.
Lewis has a fans only account
for his OnlyFans.
Yeah, I mean, like, you guys said you have to make money. You had to pay all the tax. You know, do what you gotta do, man.
So he pays taxes.
Oh,
That and he
God.
does Monet.
All right.
Exactly.
So thank you for listening, everybody. Hope you
Rob, it was a
enjoyed.
pleasure, man.
Be sure
Thank
to
you.
leave any comments you can, subscribe, like, share this podcast with anybody that's might be interested. And as Josue likes to say, always be sure to lead with love.
Ah.
There you go.
Sobre todo, mucho, pero mucho.
Oh, yeah, hey, that's who I'm packing it after.